Welcome to Hip Hop Movie Club, where three old heads put their old heads together to vibe on some of the most memorable or forgettable hip hop themed movies of all time. And here's HHMC with your HHMCs Boogie, JB, and DynoWright. Season 1, Episode 4, Breakin 2, Electric Boogaloo. TriStar Pictures and Canon Group released Breakin 2, Electric Boogaloo in 1984, just 7 months after the original Breakin. Reprising their roles from the original are Lucinda Dickey, Adolfo Shabba Doo Quinones, and Michael Boogaloo Shrimp Chambers. Also returning is Ice-T as the Radiotron rapper. Breakin 2 was directed by Sam Furstenberg and written by Jan Ventura and Julie Reichert.
Breakin 2 continues the trials of Kelly, an aspiring dancer, and her friends Ozone and Turbo. So the main premise here was the conflict between Kelly's desire to continue learning street dancing against her father's wishes, as well as the crew's battle to keep the Community Dance and Arts Center open for the many children, where Ozone now serves as a teacher and mentor, despite the plans of a commercial real estate developer.
Dun dun dun. All right, Boogie.
The one thing that I absolutely loved about this movie is the story. You know, I love stories with the little guys fighting back. And in this case, they were fighting gentrification in the neighborhood. You know, Miracles was the community center that provided these children with an outlet and helped them express themselves. This land developer, Mr. Douglas, was just concerned with the dollar signs and improving the property value that would result from the building of the shopping center that would, result after Miracles was torn down. There's a couple of conversations that stuck out with me. There was one where Mr. Randall was talking with the city folks and the commission about, and the name of the building came up. She said, "What's the name of the building?" And they said, "Miracles." He said, "Oh, that's such an inspiring name." And then she inquired, what's going to happen to all of those children once the building is torn down? And the immediate response was, well, they have their local club, Radiotron. And I'm thinking to myself, Radiotron is an adult club. That's an adult nightclub. It's not appropriate for children. And I've seen this story play out, numerous times, in my neighborhood and other urban neighborhoods where, funding is cut to these different programs, community centers, rec centers, boys and girls clubs, et cetera. And the children are left with no activities. And as a result, they get bored, things happen, crime starts to go up, violence goes up. So in this case, it was a good, happy ending to see them fight back against the big guys and win. So, that always sticks out with me, that storyline, that's kind of the basis for the whole movie.
I agree. I love the fact that Ozone is a teacher for the children at the community center. Kids have a place to go to for art, culture, dance, and they form their own community. The breakdancing in this movie is stellar, just like in the first one. There's a classic scene with Turbo dancing on the walls in the ceiling. I think you may have seen that. That was pretty unique. And there was the one song, the Dindada song, which I know you love, Boogie. That's a great one. And, that was awesome. The theme overall, I love as well. I like to call it the precocious versus the pretentious. So these precocious young kids with a lot of courage, and there versus the pretentious, the ostentatious, the wealthy, and they just look down upon them. You can tell in their language. There were some scenes where they were asked to maybe help support the community center, and Kelly's father made some really nasty comment about, they're just going to spend it on drugs and other things like that, and stay away from those quote unquote criminals.
Right.
So I love the way they ended up, rally together. Even the rival breakdancing crews joined forces, Electro Rock, along with Turbo and Ozone and their team, TKO team. And Turbo was the hero in the face of the developers, right? He had been injured, and he gets up and he stands right in front of those bulldozers at the end, which was awesome to see. How about you, DynoWright?
Well, this movie isn't what you would call a cinematic triumph, but who doesn't love a hey everybody, let's put on a show kind of story, and we got to save the orphanage or the community center or the old theater or the family estate. It's a well-worn formula, and it works in this movie. It's also not for nothing influential to my own sense of humor. Like anytime there's a sequel of anything, the subtitle is always either Electric Boogaloo or The Wrath of Khan or The Secret of the Ooze. So without this movie, I wouldn't have my go-to jokes.
Yeah, that one point that you brought up about Turbo dancing on the ceiling, man, that's such a classic scene. They really know how to showcase Turbo like they did in the first one with the broom scene, and then this one, he was kind of going off, and there was some pretty good special effects for the time at that time to pull that off. And I like to call it, like I called it in the first one, that's this Fred Astaire moment. This is his Fred Astaire moment for this one as well. And it's something about that song that he dances to. Every time I hear that song, I really love the song, and it just kind of it melds together really well.
That was a great scene for sure.
That is probably the best scene in the movie, I think.
Yeah,
one of the best ones. It was really innovative for the time, I think.
Yeah,
that's definitely the most memorable scene, because I remember I was talking to my brother-in-law recently. Shout out to Jay. I was talking about Breakin' and 2, and he goes, "Oh, when he dances on the walls and the ceilings." I was like, "Yes, I remember that." Now, honestly, I couldn't remember if that was in the first one or the second one, but now I remember the second one, and everybody was talking about that for months and months after the movie came out.
Yeah.
Now, there was some things that I was, not really in favor of, or kind of bugged me a little bit, and not really. It was kind of like the cheese factor for me was just way too high. I understand that the dancing had to be showcased, and it was, but I just thought that some of the scenes just dragged on. Like even in one of the early scenes, the whole neighborhood starts dancing, the mailman stops and dances, the cop stops and dances.
Yeah.
For me, it was like a bad Double Mint commercial that just would not end.
Yeah, it was a little too much. If a little better had they just showcased on the actual dancers dancing, and just kind of everybody else was kind of like, oh wow, looking around and clapping their hands or something, not actually dancing with them. Like that kind of pushed a little over the edge a little bit.
It took me out a little bit, and it was like that scene in Rocky where he runs through the whole town and he winds up on the steps of the art museum in Philadelphia. But like in this case, it was they're all running through Los Angeles and everybody's dancing. It's like a Michael Jackson video broke out, like all these random people dancing.
It's like a Pepsi, the choice of a new generation.
Yeah.
Come on down, let's go. Here's a can.
There was some Pepsi product placement in there, so I thought that too.
That's funny. There were a couple other similar scenes that I just thought were like over the top cheesy, like the fake fight between the TKO and the Electro Rock crew. They were standing on the cars and they were like, "Oh, I'm going to fight you, but no, I'm going to just like kind of like dance in front of you." And well, not really vicious, just kind of like, take that move. No, you take that move. It's not like when they're in the club. It was just kind of like over the top for me.
Yeah, that took me out too.
Yeah, I think like that scene would have been better had it been done like it was done in Beach Street. Like, when they were in the subway scene in the subway and they were dancing, that didn't look cheesy at all.
Oh yeah, that you could see the intent there, right?
Right, it didn't look cheesy, and they were pretty much doing similar choreography, but it just didn't come across as cheesy as it did, in this one.
Right. And the hospital scene later on. Yeah.
When I see you.
Yeah, I was legitimately concerned for Turbo. He had took the developers or the construction workers' lunchbox. He stumbled down the concrete steps, banged his head. And by the way, did you notice how bad that stunt double was?
It's so bad that he falls so bad he ages 20 years and 50 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. The guy was like 35 years old and a lot heavier. Yeah. It was just awful editing.
Clearly not the same size. Listeners, this is at 1 hour and 2 minutes. Just fast forward to that and see how
that scene reminds me of I'm gonna get you, sucker.
Yes.
And the mother walks in and don't you touch my baby. And she's beating them all up. You could clearly see the mustache.
Yeah.
And it's a man, and it turns around and it's her again. That's exactly what that scene reminds me of. I mean, my sisters and I used to crack up every time that scene came on.
Oh man.
That's an example why I think this movie is awesomely bad. It's really bad, but there's an awesomeness to it. It's so terribly bad.
Like the Toxic Avenger or something, where it's just so bad. But yeah, the stunt double remind me of almost like something Naked Gun would do.
Yes,
it's just blatantly obvious that it's a different person.
Yeah,
and you're supposed to just.
At least they got the race correct. I mean, I think in Naked Gun it was like they swapped in a black person for a white person.
They got the race, they got the outfit, but oh man, it was rough.
Like his hair was like really short cut. It wasn't even it didn't have like a jerry curl or anything.
That was funny. But if you think about it, we become attached to Turbo and Ozone. So young Turbo falls down these steps, hits his head, he's bleeding from the head. And then moments later, he's in the hospital. They're asking if he's okay. And that becomes an absolute joke. He gets up, he's in a full body cast. I don't know how he had a cast on his leg or everything, but he's okay. He starts dancing around. Everybody starts dancing. They're in the hallway. All the nurses are doing dancing. There's sexy nurses. It's just, what is going on all of a sudden? Yep. And then there's another dude that's like flatlining, and the staff just takes off and ignores him and starts dancing. And then it just becomes a big party. And I was torn because they're messing with my emotions.
Oh man. Yeah, the poor guy in the wheelchair rolls out and he's got his arm in a sling. And next thing you know, he's dancing around, the sling's swinging around. It's not even on his arm anymore.
Yeah. It did become Naked Gun-esque a little bit.
And if you notice, when Ozone goes to find Kelly to bring her to the hospital, they're wearing a set of clothes, and then when they get to the hospital, it's a completely different set of clothes. So that was, you had time to stop and get changed. Like what happened there? You could probably do a whole episode of just continuity errors in this movie, but that took me out a little bit. Like, whoa, what happened? You stopped to get something to eat. What's going on there?
Yeah. And again, that whole scene, like I said, with when they were walking down the street, it would have played out a little better had the people from Miracles showed up and said, you know what, Turbo's down, let's start dancing to cheer him up. And meanwhile, the hospital staff is trying to stop them from dancing because they're disrupting the hospital. But instead, everybody just participates and it just turns cheesy.
Yeah. It went from a B movie to a C movie to a D movie in rapid succession for me. The last part that I would consider ultra cheesy, the song about fundraising, when they were told they need to raise $200,000 to save Miracles. And I'm listening to the lyrics and it's like, you got to get that money if you want the honey. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it went on. That song went on, and I'm like, oh man, that was tough to listen to.
It was tough. This movie was tough to watch.
It's too funny. Yeah, there's a couple of things. There's like one other thing that I noticed too was when Electro Rock threw the spray can through the window and they went down and chased them down. And I'm looking at Electro Rock. And the chick from Electro Rock is there, and she's got a beef with TKO. And I'm like, didn't they just get you a gig in the first one? Why are you beefing with them now? They just had, they had, you were dancing with them. But hey, whatever.
More continuity errors.
Another non sequitur.
Yeah.
Like out of that battle, at least one thing that did make sense was Poppin' Taco, who was one of the guys from Electro Rock in the first one. He was actually with TKO. And I'm like, okay, see, he appreciates getting a gig. He hangs out with them now. He's not, he's actually battling his old crew. Like, hey, what are you guys doing? But the chick is with them. I'm like, you were just with them. Like, what happened? It just didn't make sense.
A lot didn't make sense in this movie.
Yeah, they all joined forces at the end in unity. against the developers. One other
We
thing
all are
that-
in the same gang, like
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. Again,
Sort of like Dancing with Kelly.
the only thing that I question also is the very end. We all know Kelly's dad is a blue blood, as I call him. He's ultra wealthy. He looks down upon everyone other than, folks in his country club and whatnot. He's very upset that Kelly's hanging out with these street dancers all this time. He wanted to go to Princeton and just kind of make something of her life. So it comes to the point where they're doing this huge fundraiser and it's televised. And I like the reporter, by the way, he helped them out. But what happened is all of a sudden, after being so negative and condescending, anti, dancing and anti-minority, honestly, all of a sudden he's watching and something flips and he says, oh, well, they are fighting for a good cause. I'm going to take out my checkbook and give them $50,000 so they can finish this. I'm like, that would never happen. It was just so ridiculous to me.
Right. Yeah, he'd have all kinds of strings attached to that $50,000. That's for sure.
Right. I mean,
Changes
if
from
he,
America.
in real life, he either doesn't give the money, which is the most likely scenario, or if he does, as you mentioned, strings attached. I'm going to put my last name on this.
It's the Bennett Center now.
Yeah, exactly. Bennett Center, right. Bennett Center, everybody that dances will have a Bennett Center logo, Bennett logo on, and everybody's going to know my name, that I did this, and whatever business I'm affiliated with is going to somehow benefit because I'm helping the underprivileged kids. There's got to be more in it for him than to just write that check.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been nice if he actually were to further develop the community center or have plans to mold these children in another way, maybe help them with some entrepreneurial program as well as art center as well.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe help them network and advance their careers otherwise as well.
Agreed.
Yeah. Any other comments about the movie itself?
I mean, there's a couple of things that I noticed as well. I mentioned in the first one, actress Leela Rashawn, she was dancing in the opening sequence. This one, she had like a small part. She was one of Rhonda's homegirls that was harassing Kelly in the Radiotron. And she's one of my favorite actresses from back in the day. I mean, she's absolutely stunning. So every time I see her, I'm like, wow, that's Leela Rashawn right there. So it's always good to see her. And then like the MC at the event at the end, that was Frankie Crocker. So if you don't know who Frankie Crocker was, Frankie Crocker is at the time, he's the late great Frankie Crocker, I should say, give him his respect. He's a very well-known and well-respected DJ in the radio community. He took New York-based WBLS to extremely renowned heights. He completely transformed their radio station and how their music format laid out. And he was very innovative. And a lot of R&B based radio stations that are out right now are based off of the format that Frankie Crocker developed. He was very innovative. And I remember I didn't know who he was at the time. When the first time I watched it, my mom always pointed him out. And I'm like, who is this guy? So then I kind of looked it up. And then I, listened to the radio. I'm like, wait a minute, Frankie Crocker, that's the guy that was in Breakin' 2, but yeah, that's somebody, if you want to look up somebody who's big in radio and who did a lot for urban format radio stations, that's your man right there, Frankie Crocker.
That is solid knowledge. Thank you, Boogie.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
Boogie, I know you own the soundtrack. What did you think of the music overall?
Oh yeah, the Breakin' 2. No, the Breakin' soundtracks, they're good in the sense that you get a pretty diverse sound. It's not complete boom bap rap through the whole album, but you can always find music to dance to, and it always puts you in a certain mood that makes you want to dance. That classic Dendada, though, that's That's a complete banger right there. You could put that on any time, and I mean, my son absolutely loves it. I played it for him one morning, and he was going crazy in the bathroom brushing his teeth. But
Can you give us a few bars? Can you give us a few bars of
that? But no, I like the soundtrack, and it's a classic. And there's a couple other songs in there. When I see you, which was a song from the hospital. Even the Radiotron song, "Believe in the Beat" is such a positive, uplifting song. Yeah, it's a good soundtrack.
It's solid. I agree. Now, could this be made today? I would say no.
Yeah, I'm going to say I would not want to see this made today.
I probably wouldn't bother to remake it today either.
Yeah, I mean, the theory that I have was that it may have been rushed to production. As we were talking before the show, Boogie was saying, yeah, they did hint at the sequel right at the end of the first one. So it seemed to me that it was rushed to production. They extended some of those dance scenes. The idea of the plot was great, but I think it was half-baked.
Yeah, they found that innovative dance craze, and they said, let's ride this wave hard and fast.
Right.
That's basically what happened.
It was piecing together a bunch of cheesy dance montages and scenes.
Yep, they found that cookie cutter little guys fighting the big guys format and just threw some dance routines to it, pushed it right on out.
Yep.
Yeah, I noticed that there was a new agent for Kelly. We were talking about this earlier in this movie. Well, the guy, what's his name? McDonald, the guy that played Shooter McGavin. Christopher McDonald. He turned down the role of her agent, and we're thinking maybe that was a wise choice. Yeah. He went on to bigger things.
So that script and ran for the hills.
Right.
No way.
He had a cheese allergy, I guess.
Yeah.
Lactose intolerant. Yeah. That being said, let's give it our rating. So it's either bring that funky flick back, or leave it in the vault. Boogie, what do you say?
This is a tough one for me because, like I said, I've watched this movie so many times as a kid, so it's kind of hard for me to let it go. I don't know if I want to bring it back or leave it in the vault. I think I'm going to leave the door cracked slightly.
It's in the vault, but it's slightly cracked, so you can
get slightly cracked in case I want to peek inside.
DynoWright, what do you got?
Despite the fact that I use anything to Electric Boogaloo as a go-to joke, I'm going to leave this in the vault. But I did appreciate that Kelly's mom called them Bozo and Turbine. It made me laugh very much.
That was funny. I also will leave it in the vault. This is the first film I will leave in the vault. I do love that Din Da Da song, though. Look that one up. That is a classic one. Yeah. What's the name of that artist, Boogie? It's a German. It's a German song, right?
It's George Krantz.
George Krantz. Yeah. Din Da Da. You got to look that up if you haven't. It's a fun beat. I'm sure you've heard it before.
Yeah, if you don't dance to that song, I got to look at you sideways. Something's wrong with you.
There was one last thing I forgot to mention is that when Ozone's on camera telling people to come to the show at the end, he said they'll be dancing and juggling, the works. And I thought, ooh, dancing and juggling.
There was a mime also, right? Clown.
There was a mime. Well, there was a mime too. Yeah. So
the magician. Yeah.
Magician.
It was a complete cinematic entertainment extravaganza.
That was wild. I want to thank all of our listeners. I know you give a shout out as well, DynoWright, but we're getting a little bit of following community here. It's been a lot of fun. I'll give a shout out to M Squared. You know who you are. Thanks for your interest, and we'll keep the dialogue going.
Yes, sir. Hip Hop Movie Club is produced by your HHMCs, JB, Boogie, and DynoWright. Theme music by Boogie. Special thanks to Susan Berger, Tawanda Edwards, and Allison Yaris. Hit us up at hiphopmovieclub@gmail.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hip Hop Movie Club. You can also check us out at hiphopmovieclub.com. In the next episode of the Hip Hop Movie Club podcast, we'll talk about Style Wars, the seminal 1983 documentary on early hip hop and graffiti culture. Subscribe in your favorite podcast app and you won't miss it. We'll also have some bonus content coming soon, so watch your feeds. Shout out to you listeners.
And remember, don't hate, proliferate.
We didn't
Yeah.
even talk about Ice-T. Ice-T's in this movie. We didn't even talk
Oh my God, we forgot about Ice-T. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, let's talk about Ice-T real quick. See if we can. So yes, it's always good, as he did in the first one. It was good to see Ice-T, a young, spry Ice-T rocking in the Radiotron, and he had that same look, similar to the MCs that were rocking at the Roxy. He had that whole rocked out studs and chains and rock star appeal to him. It's always good to see him. And then, at the end, he got a chance to drop a few bars at the Miracles fundraiser with Hot Top backing him up as his dancer. So yeah, shout out to Ice-T, man. And another thing we want to know is, did you freestyle these lyrics, or was it written down? Because it's not on the soundtrack. And hit us up, please. Let us know.
At Final Level. Tell us what's up.
Final Level, please. I'm gonna tag him and ask him too.
Yes.
Do that.
He responds to fans. I'm gonna ask him.
You should ask him. All right, listeners, if he tells us what it is, we'll tell you in the podcast.